Welcome, mayors. My name is Stacy Fuji with the African American Mayors Association. We are pleased you joined us today for our last virtual session of the 2023 Economic Mobility Leadership Institute mayoral cohort. After today's session, we will host office hours for the cohort to answer any questions you may have about your strategic plans, funding, and implementation. Then you will be released to implement your carefully crafted strategic plans during the months of July through December 2023. The ALMA team has reviewed the strategic plans submitted by this outstanding cohort and has returned your drafts with comments. Should you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me via email or phone call for a quick response. I will be available to you during the implementation phase as well, so please do not hesitate to reach out. ALMA has made a calendar of events based on your strategic plans, and that calendar will be shared with our larger community of practice. You may be contacted by the Gates Foundation or some of our partners who may want to attend your events. Therefore, should your dates or locations change for your events, please let us know as soon as possible. Thank you. Now, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our CEO, Phyllis Dickerson, for the welcome.
Thanks, Stacy. Welcome, mayors, to EMLI's last virtual learning session. It's great to see everyone, including ALMA's president, Mayor Sean Patterson Howard. Great to see you, Mayor Patterson Howard. ALMA's
Great to be here.
Yes, ALMA's Economic Mobility Leadership Institute is focusing on critical learning opportunities for mayors and their team, with the goal of creating strategic economic mobility plans to implement in your respective municipalities. Today's session will be about student loans. Among 2016 graduates, nearly 40% of Black students graduated with $30,000 or more in debt, compared to only 29% of whites, 23% of Hispanic students, and 18% of Asian students. That's quoted by PBS News reported. Our hour-long session will provide insight and data, as well as share necessary and helpful tools available to decrease the debt of our students are taking on to attend college, thereby creating opportunities for wealth creation and retention in your communities. Stacy?
Thank you, Phyllis. Today, our partners from Results for America will lead us in a presentation detailing their work around the catalog created to assist you in developing your EMLI events. Then we will discuss student loans with our panel discussion from recent graduates who were able to graduate debt-free, then a final presentation from our partners at SUCCI. Please remember to use your chat feature to ask questions throughout the session. Without further ado, let's begin. By now, you or your staff should have seen or had access to the Economic Mobility Catalog. The purpose of using this tool is to assist you with shaping your efforts as you build your Economic Mobility Leadership Institutes. Well, today we have Ross Tilchen, the director of the Economic Mobility Catalog on the solutions team at Results for America. He is here to reinforce the catalog's importance and to answer any questions you may have. Please welcome Ross to the Economic Mobility Leadership Institute.
Good afternoon, mayors. How's everyone today? It's great to see you, and ALMA staff, thank you so much for having me. Huge honor to be here. So pleased to be presenting to you the Economic Mobility Catalog and some of Results for America's work. Like Stacy said, I'm Ross Tilchen, director on the solutions team at RFA. I lead our Economic Mobility Catalog project, so any questions you have about this resource, I am your guy. I've got a few slides for you. I'm going to talk for about 10 minutes, give you a quick demo of the resource, and then we'll have about 5 minutes for questions at the end of my presentation. Sound good? Great. Let me share my screen here. And I lost your faces. Okay, here we go. Alrighty, let's get started with just a bit of background on economic mobility in the United States, a little bit of framing here. So economic mobility and the landscape of economic mobility across the country has really changed over the past 50 to 70 years. So briefly, it used to be nearly guaranteed that children would grow up to earn more than their parents. And that has become decreasingly true over the course of the 20th century and has continued on today. So where it used to be a near certainty that a child born to a low-income family would make more than their parents, it's now just about a coin flip, only about a 50% chance that a child born to a low-income family will grow up to earn more than their parents. Now, this is uneven across the United States. The landscape of economic opportunity, of economic mobility, looks different in different places. So this is drawing from research from Raj Chetty, who's shown that by region, the chances that a child born to a low-income family will ascend that socioeconomic ladder and become a higher income individual when they grow up really varies. So in places like Charlotte, North Carolina, only a 4.4% chance at present that a child will grow up to become high income if they're born to a low income family, really different than some places in California. So I share this just as a little bit of background to give you a landscape of what we're looking at across the country, and to communicate that local decisions really matter here in shaping the landscape of economic mobility. The decisions that local leaders are making can have a really powerful impact on opportunity for your citizens. So that makes it really important that investments are being made in strategies that are proven to work. The good news is that there are a lot of strategies that are proven to work. They are out there. We know that they're hard to find. That is why we created Results for America's Economic Mobility Catalog. And evidence-based solutions exist across the policy landscape. So whether you are focused on education, workforce development, housing and community development, there are so many interventions that have been tested, that have been rigorously evaluated and shown good results. Question is, where do you find them? That brings us to the Economic Mobility Catalog. So this is a resource that we launched, let's see, about 2 years ago at this point at RFA. It is very wide-ranging. It's publicly available. It's free. And our whole purpose here is to help leaders like you identify and implement strategies that are proven to work in improving opportunity for your residents. We've tried to create this in a way where it's really easy to use. I don't know how many of you have dug into some of the government clearinghouses before. They can be pretty clunky and pretty academic. So this is written with local leaders like you in mind. And all of the content in here, every word that my team and I write for this is intended to facilitate implementation. This is not an academic exercise. This is, how do I get this done in my community, learning from the best practices that have been developed elsewhere. So quick overview of the content here. We've got overview material, sort of 1 and 2 pagers of over 200 programs and strategies in the resource. We have 50 case studies that are pretty deep that go into how specific communities across the country were able to implement strategies that have good evidence. And those we'll dive in a little bit more, really get into the nitty-gritty of what did it take to make this happen? What lessons can I draw from as I think about how this could play in my community? And then we have essentially self-guided, deeper curricula focused on what we call solution sprints. So self-guided courses that can help you and your team make progress on a weekly basis towards an evidence-based strategy. Real quick here, just to give you a sense of where our heads are at when we created this resource and where we sort of sit as we're developing new content, we're trying to answer these questions. What strategies out there have good evidence? What does the evidence actually say about this strategy? How much is it going to cost to implement this strategy? And so on and so forth. So this is just to show you, we are really trying to sit, to the extent that we're able, in your shoes, understand the questions that you have about a strategy when you're first encountering it, and then have the answer ready for you so you're able to move forward. With that, I'm going to switch over real quick and show you the resource itself. You able to see the catalog? Can I get a thumbs up? Okay, great. So here's the resource. As I noted before, we've got evidence-based strategies across all policy areas here. So just because we're talking about student loans later in the session, maybe we can do our little journey here through post-secondary and workforce development. So within this policy area, we have identified through consultation with Lord knows how many experts, the full landscape of broader categories of strategies that have good evidence. So college access and readiness supports, diversion programs, early childhood workforce supports, a full range of strategies that sort of at a high level have shown good results. Let's choose something that feels relevant to student loans here, maybe guidance and supports for post-secondary students. So this is our first layer of content. This is going to be that overview of the practice. What does it look like to provide evidence-based guidance and supports for post-secondary students? So we have an overview, quick look into some key stakeholders, a snapshot of the evidence with links to all the studies if you want to dive in there, a series of metrics from the Urban Institute, which are really interesting. These are good ways to be able to benchmark where your community stands on data that's relevant to this particular strategy. And then also through close consultation with experts, a range of best practices in implementation. So that's sort of the first layer of content that I have to show you. Just in the interest of time, I'll go through this real quick, but we won't click in. Within the broader practice, there are, of course, evidence-based models. So there are particular branded programs that are guidance and supports for post-secondary students that we have collected here. And we're able to assign an evidence ranking that shows you just how rigorously evaluated all of these have been. The format of these pages very closely resembles sort of this larger format for the practice, but you can dive into a particular model and learn about them on those pages. The last thing I want to show you here is just our case study format. So again, these are stories of how particular places were able to implement these strategies that have good evidence. So in this case, this is the CUNY ASAP program. Maybe some of you are familiar with this. Community college completion program that started in New York, but has since been replicated in a number of places. So we give you an overview here of how this looked like being implemented in the Bronx specifically. So an overview of the results and accomplishments, an executive summary, and we write these trying to sit in the seat that you sit in as mayors. So what's the civic context? What was the challenge that this community was confronting that needed to be overcome? How is this strategy, how is CUNY ASAP the right solution to that challenge? In the implementation, what were those factors that drove success? What were the major obstacles to success? We know that that's very important to highlight. We give you an overview of the key milestones here in the implementation effort. So we try to offer you, just the quick snapshot. And then if you want to learn more about each of those milestones, you can. And then more of a thematic breakdown. So what did it take for leaders to really come together and take this problem on? What did that strategy design process look like? So how were community members engaged? How were participants consulted with in the design of this program? That sort of thing. The funding, I know we all care about the funding. Those key activities leading up to and following launch. And then how the approach has been measured and refined. We do want to keep this virtuous cycle of evidence creation going, so that's something that we always like to highlight in our case studies. So this is our case study format. Like I said, we've got 50 of these. We are always looking for more, so I'll just say right now that if you have promising interventions in your communities that you think might be good fits for a case study, please talk to me. I'll share my email at the end of the session. We would love to tell your stories, have those present in the Economic Mobility Catalog, and lift the work that you've done up as a national model in the implementation of evidence-based practices. I have a feeling that I'm over time. So I'm going to stop sharing and cut it short. Oh, am I okay, Stacy? All right. I think that we did the full crash course. So I think I'm good. I'm happy to stop here and answer any questions that the mayors might have.
I can kick us off as the mayors think about maybe what they want to ask you. In your experience, Ross, and thank you, that was a fantastic presentation. Can you maybe make some recommendations or share with us what are some missteps or potholes that we need to avoid in implementing our programs?
Oh gosh, what a big and excellent question. One thing that we see across case study, the case studies really do stretch across a really wide range of policy areas, housing stuff, education stuff, workforce development. They look really different. I would say that when leaders are not able to engage their community members first and make sure that the direction that they're interested in pushing in is supported by the community that they are hoping to serve, that's when you can start to get in trouble. When things start to feel like they are happening without some degree of community engagement and without community informing what that effort looks like, I think that's when trouble can occur. And one thing that we try to highlight with these case studies is that many of our case studies tell the story of a national model that's being implemented in a particular place. And as we know, different places are just different. Cultural context might vary. The political situation, of course, is always going to vary. So many of these stories are how local context was taken into account when implementing something that had been implemented elsewhere. And that's the sort of thing where without engaging your community members, without getting their feedback and their help in designing the specifics of the process, that's when things can run into a bit of trouble. There are like 10 other things that we've identified in case studies, but I think that's a good place to start.
Very good. Well, Phyllis likes all gold stars, so our hope is to get you at least 9 case studies.
I love it. Let's go for 10.
Okay, mayors, if you have further questions for Ross, or if you have questions about today's presentation, as I mentioned before, we are hosting office hours for you. And I'm always available to you, and Ross will also be available to you to make sure your awesome strategic plans are implemented beautifully within your municipalities. Ross, we really do appreciate your presentation, and mayors will make Ross's contact information available to you. We will now begin the second half of our session, opening our student loan conversation with recent graduates. We have our very own graduate student, Keviana Rawls, leading the discussion. Keviana, take it away.
Thank you, Stacy. Today, we are joined by 2 recent graduates who had student loans, but now have a different story. So I'd like to introduce to you all Evan Howard, a 2019 Morehouse graduate, and Mackenzie Estep, a 2022 St. Augustine's University graduate. Please welcome our guests to the Economic Mobility Leadership Institute. So Mackenzie and Evan, thank you both so much for being here today. We're going to have you answer a few questions for us and talk to us a little bit more about your experiences. So we know the 3-year moratorium for student loans is set to expire this August, and the Supreme Court is expected to rule on President Biden's student loan forgiveness plan in the near future. So how does it feel to know that your educational debts are paid?
Hey, how y'all doing? It's Evan Howard. Firstly, it feels like a weight. It feels like a weight that essentially folks never had. And by that I mean and by that I essentially mean you hear every day and from everybody around you after going through school and I guess being a part of that experience that on the back end, that is something that you have to look forward to. And as unfortunate as that is, to be a person that doesn't have to experience that, it is tantamount different. It is a good experience, but I would say it's one of those things that I feel like because of it, because it's so new, it's kind of hard to move forward with, if that makes sense. It's just kind of like a no one in your family's kind of experienced it, no one around you has experienced it. So since you don't have any guidance with it, it's kind of like you're the first. So did you do with it now? And so I know for me personally, I have a lot of a lot of endeavors that I would like to do that because of that, and just kind of has me at a standstill too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Picking off what Evan said, like it is a financial relief. Weight lifted off the shoulders. I remember saying that as I had been accepted of the scholarship award that did pay off my student loan debt. And I can absolutely say that it puts you in third base moving forward in your career and your financial success and where you come to plan. It really does and heighten the importance of making sure that you have financial readiness in the future. And I think that if someone can experience a miraculous event such as that, of just really just having that weight lifted off your shoulders when you're coming from, you know, backgrounds that are really a burden and you're not coming from an affluent family, it really can just open your eyes to the possibilities. And I think, you know, where me and Evan are coming from in this situation, it absolutely is just a powerful impact in our lives. And we want to make sure that we're being a good steward moving forward. So we can definitely testify to say that it is weight lifted off the shoulders.
I love that. Those are great answers. And we really appreciate you both for being here and talking to us about your experiences. So Evan, can you tell us about how much did you borrow and what were your plans to pay off your educational debt? You spoke a little to that. And then also tell us what actually happened. How did you end up debt free? And how has having those loans paid off really changed your life for the better?
I guess to address your first question about how much I borrowed, it was upwards between, I guess, if I remember correctly, because it's been a minute and, you know, no one really wants to revisit that at all. But I owe upwards about $150,000 to $200,000. And the way that got paid, I think Robert Smith ended up paying my classes tuitions. And I know, at least for me, during my experience going through school, I didn't get to finish on time with a lot of my friends, and I honestly didn't feel like I worked hard enough to deserve something like that. But in the end, I would say it was miraculous, and it was, like I said, it was a very different experience. It was, again, life-changing. I've been able to engage in different fiscal activities because of the flexibility that it's allowed me to have. I've gotten into trading. I went into a couple business endeavors with my friends, and I don't think that would have been possible without that blessing. Along with that, it gives me a different perspective on life because at this point in time, I'm able to do things that I don't think a lot of people are able to. And at the same time, because they're not, and I'm, I guess, fairly young with the blessing itself, I'm still trying to figure out how to utilize them things as well. And so I would say, in short, it changed my life for the better. It's like a catch-22. It's like a gift and a curse. I think about it like that.
Thank you so much, Evan. And so Mackenzie, kind of asking you the same question. How did you plan to pay for school? What actually happened for you? And then how has student loans being paid off really changed your life, opened up the door for new job opportunities, your credit, and just future plans?
Wow, yeah. So that is a lot to talk about, and it just feels like a blessing to be able to even answer this question. I went in to my senior year, and I too, just as Evan, did not finish on time. I did finish this past fall. So my entire collegiate career, I was focused on a lot of different areas in my future. I really wanted to make sure that I was focused on that financial and career readiness in myself, because I knew where I come from. I didn't really have that opportunity to gain those kind of resources. So as soon as I had that land grant opportunity, I took advantage of it, and I really just made sure that I had engraved in internships. I ended up with $44,000, close to $50,000 in student debt. And my plan from high school, I had just finished AFJROTC, second lieutenant, graduating from high school. I absolutely am honest to say that I ended with a 2.0 GPA. I was not focused on college. I didn't think college was an option for me. At the time, I thought that just going into the workforce or possibly military was the best route. Once my mind was changed based off just really looking at where I'd come from in my background and knowing the importance of what would impact on being the first in my family to take on college, excuse me, I decided to go forward with St. Augustine's University, which was a private institution. Those often really are expensive. And so I was paying almost $30,000 a year. And with the financial help that I had from the Pell Grants, it did help some, but I knew that I was still accumulating debt. And my plan to take on that was military, going after Army ROTC again. It was different from Air Force. I actually did not like it. After a year and a half, I quit it. And I took the risk to accumulate the debt and not be able to pay it off by military, by just joining in student leadership. I really wanted to focus on, again, like I said, that professional development. I took on SGA and many other pageant opportunities, which led to Miss St. Augustine's University. And it just put me in the right areas at the right time. I really believe that that risk that I took really put me in the right path. I took a risk of faith. I put my faith in my religion and really knew that as long as I had the belief that what I was putting forward right now was going to pay off the future, then that's all that mattered. And so I did everything in that good steward fashion. And by the time I was Miss St. Augustine's University, starting my senior year, going into that fall, I had just had all my student account balances paid off in the spring, summer, and fall by my president's administration when we had the CARES Act. That led to a news article being produced, and my words were able to be shared about the impact on it, which was caught by someone on the Nick Cannon staff. And so they reached out to me via email, and they wanted to bring certain students on who had a similar story. And we had no idea that they would be paying off student debt. We thought that the least they would do was pay off our last student years of account balances and tuition. Going up there, knowing that my student debt was relieved. I remember, and to answer the credit question, I was sitting in the room at the end when they interviewed us. And one student said from Clark, Atlanta, I cannot believe that my credit is about to have so much relief and it's about to raise. And so thinking about that good, fresh start that you get going into your future, I just look back at that investment that I made on my resume and who I am, and just thinking about that risk that I took and not trying to pay. Now, I'm not going to stretch to say I did not think about it at all. I did go in with payment plans. I did use UNCF emergency relief funds. That was a great opportunity from grants funding through their programs. And then TRIO, I was a TRIO student. Student support success programs did give us grants within our first and second year. So I took advantage of every resource possible. It really was a strain because when the pandemic happened, I was working 3 jobs, work, study at my institution. I was a caregiver on weekends for elderly during the pandemic. And I also was a frontline worker at a grocery store. So my time was stretched while I was having the virtual education on the background. So there was a lot to manage. I think that I wasn't thinking about the debt that I was accruing. I knew that it was a thing, but I wasn't focused on it. So I think that if we really focus more on the students' enrichment in their education and really planning to put them in the right places in their future, that professional development, they will become good stewards of their financial relief opportunities. They'd want to take access of those resources, because I think anyone who has that debt doesn't realize how much of a burden it's going to be until it actually hits 6 months later once you graduate. And that anxiety that it brings, knowing that you're trying to struggle to find a job, is just difficult. And so when I say it puts us on third base, it just allows me to look forward at the home run advantage and just think of, okay, Mackenzie, like, what can you do to really take advantage of this opportunity? So it just really changed my life in a very powerful way, and I'm blessed to have it. And so just moving forward, I am really taking a leap into my career. I just joined, I just accepted a job offer today, actually, with Truth Initiative to be a youth development leadership coordinator. So this position, I can say now I can invest into my career. I can invest into my home. I can invest into my resources moving forward and really starting myself to grow for the career path that I have. And I can be more cautious when I want to go into post-secondary education and use the programs that you guys are creating to be smart about my future and how I'm going to pay for it. So thank you for asking. And if there's any questions, I will be available to always answer.
Yes, thank you, Mackenzie, for that as well. And I know you all may have put some questions in the chat, so checking in with Stacy. We really appreciate both of you for being here today. Mayors, if you all have any questions that you'd like to ask our panelists, please feel free to put them in the chat or use the raise hand feature if you feel comfortable. And so Mackenzie and Evan's contact information is included on the contact list that I shared with you all. So if you want to reach out to them directly, you do have their emails available. And then if you want to just have a conversation with them or have them come speak during one of your events, please reach out to them as they are available and happy to talk about their experiences. I do see a raised hand, so if that person wants to go ahead.
Yeah, this is Matt Jackson, City of Beverly Hills, Missouri. And having a Howard University student, pre-law student, I wanted to say, I wanted to ask the panelists if they have the same issue at their university. It seems as though Howard gets a lot of donations and a lot of funding from different places. One of the complaints from a lot of the student body was every time it seemed like Howard got a large influx of money and they thought that maybe they would benefit from some of those funds, that Howard would then go up on tuition the next year and basically make it worse for the student, even though the university would get an influx of money. And just wanted to know if you all experienced some of that on your campuses through your years of study.
I guess I can speak on that. I would say during my time at Morehouse, there were a couple of times that I did have to, I was taken aback at not the level of disregard, because I feel like that's a very strong word, but the lack of attention to certain things. And I would say that ultimately, as a student, I feel like certain things like housing, food, and yeah, when Morehouse meets, I'm not sure about Howard, but Morehouse specifically, there's a couple of things that I would say, like as a student, that I would wish that was changed, and I do have concerns with, in terms of inquiring about questions as to where money and things like that go, especially, like I said, especially seeing as some things down there at the time seemed to be a little bit wonky. But I guess ultimately, from my position, I was there to get the education. And so the experience in between in regards to like the living situations at times wasn't really a part of, I guess, my overall feelings about the institution itself, simply because the experience that I had with my Morehouse brothers, and also shout out to y'all that's on the call, on the Zoom thing now, it was life-changing. And so when I think about the turmoil, at least that I faced and some of my brothers faced at Morehouse, I think about it bringing us together. So while I do have gripes as an alumni, and I hopefully at one point in time hope to change, I feel like certain things for us were necessary, but I won't be as, again, heavy-handed or just to speak on other people's institutions.
Evan, thank you so much for that answer. Again, you all do have Evan and Mackenzie's contact, so please reach out to them, please connect with them, learn more about their experiences and their interests, as I'm sure they would be happy to connect with you all. So I'm going to give it back to you, Stacey. Thank you all again, and we're on to the next one.
Thank you, Keviana. Thank you, graduates. I would like to say, both of you said you didn't graduate on time, but I would argue you graduated right on time. So now we are moving to the third presentation and our final presentation. I certainly wish we had more than an hour because we have so many interesting things to talk about. Now we're moving on to speak about Suchi. It's a revolutionary wealth growth platform made for the underserved and underrepresented children of America. By helping families learn smart financial habits and opening a free, no strings attached savings account, families are able to get access to funds for their children's educational efforts. Today, we are joined by the founder and acting CEO, David Adefeso. Please welcome David to EMLI.
Hello, everybody. I apologize for the sweating. I'm in Port Arthur, Texas, and it feels like 150 degrees over here, considering we don't have humidity in Los Angeles. I'm enjoying the humidity, but I'm sweating a lot because of it. I want to applaud AMA and also EMLI for doing this. The timing could not be better. As you know, within the next 8 days, supposedly the Supreme Court will speak on the validity of the student debt forgiveness program, which pretty much forgives somewhere between 500 and 600 billion dollars. The structure of that is 125,000 forgiveness, and Pell Grant recipients get another 10,000 in forgiveness. The overall impact of that forgiveness program is significant. There's about 45 million children and adults, about 3.5 million adults with student debt today, and 45% of those people, 20 million, will have the loan forgiven, canceled. 55% of those borrowers will have more flexible loan terms and they'll forgive the interest. The impact on people of color is significant. 1/4. I'm going to be preaching to the choir here. I didn't join your other 5 sessions. So, you've probably talked about a lot of this. So excuse me if I'm, pretty much repeating some of the things that have been said. 1/4 of Black people in America have a negative net worth. The first 10,000 of loan forgiveness will move 500,000 Americans, Black Americans, from negative to positive net worth. The average Black borrower will have their loans cut by 50%. 25% of Black borrowers will have the entire federal loan forgiven. 50% of Latinos will have the entire loan forgiven. Black women who are disproportionately affected with student debt, as you probably all know, Black women hold 2/3 of student debt, and they're disproportionately affected. 1/4 of these women, Black women, will have student debt. So there's a lot more forgiveness for them. To understand why I'm usually not the typical guy, the Wall Street type of guy who jumps into solving a problem this large. So it may help to understand a little bit about my background before you understand why I'm taking on this mission. I came from Lagos, Nigeria 33 years ago. I just graduated from college at 20 years old. I hopped on a plane. I had $250. I landed at JFK. And it was a very difficult time for me. With $250, not speaking the language, no friends, no family, I had to survive. And we don't call it homelessness anymore. We say we were transitional. I was transitional for 6 months. We don't say poor anymore. We say underserved. I was very underserved. And we don't say food. We don't say hungry. We say food insecure. I was very, very food insecure. And but I was blessed, and I was very, very, very lucky for 2 reasons. One is I had a college degree, and I had a strong faith in Christ, and I think that propelled me to do many, many great things. And so 2 years after I got here, I passed my CPA exams. I was top 3% in the country. 2 years after that, I got to Harvard Business School. I graduated. I went to Wall Street. I worked underneath Jamie Dimon. Probably did about 90 to 95. Jamie Dimon is now the current CEO of JP Morgan. I probably did about 90 to 95 billion dollars in mergers, acquisitions, corporate finance transactions, some of America's largest companies. I worked with some of the smartest and the most talented people on Wall Street. So I had knowledge, and I set up my own company, the Pacific Group, March of 2003. 20 years ago. I expanded around the country, had offices in New York, in Texas, in California, multiple offices in California, and I consolidated during the pandemic. And for a couple of reasons. 5 years ago, I had reason to look back. I'd been more successful than I ever thought I would be. And I had reason to look back, and I realized people like me have left a lot of people like me behind. Poor immigrants, people who are unable to afford, to save. And so I teamed up with some very, very smart people who I'm going to introduce today. Cedric Ceballos, who's on here. Cedric was in the NBA for 12 years, Phoenix Suns, and Los Angeles Lakers. Craig Smith, he's at the airport. I don't know if you've logged off. He played with the Los Angeles Clippers. Jerry Norris, who's a colleague, used to be a colleague of mine. She was at Harvard Business School 2 years before me. And so what struck me 5 years ago, and what was the challenge that we were confronting? Well, What I didn't understand first was why the poverty rate in America is 11%, but it's 22% for Black people. I didn't understand why the poverty rate for Black children is 22%, but it's 33% for Black people. I didn't understand why the Federal Reserve said the average Black person is worth 180, the average person in America is worth, a white person is worth $187,000, but the average Black person is worth $24,100, 7.8 times less. The median household in America today is $69,000. The median household for a Black person is $48,000, 30% less. What is the problem? I know a lot of Black people, and I know a lot of white people. I don't see a lot of white people smarter than Black people or more hardworking. I see a lot of Black people who are relating and engaging in the environment in which they were raised. That's what they're reacting to. And the lack of access, the lack of opportunity, and the lack of financial literacy. So I spent 5 years of my time, 5 long years, researching the problem of poverty in America. And I got to tell you, you all probably know this. It's very, very clear. Ever since 1619, when the first slave ship came into America, racism was intentional. The racial disparity of wealth was created by people. And if we're going to solve that problem, we have to be intentional about it. Every single child, we have to be very intentional. When Frederick Douglass said in 1855, to an old slave owner, he was a slave abolitionist, he said, he was talking about the enduring legacy of slavery on the minds and the economic well-being Black people. He said, it's much easier to raise strong children than it is to build broken men. We have a lot of broken men because we didn't build our children. And so how do we solve these problems? Education. Education is the great equalizer. Multiple studies show that if a child attains an education, and I'm going to define an education in a little bit. We don't just define an education as a 4-year education, right? There's multiple ways we define a higher education. But if a child attains a higher education, they make $1 million more than a child who doesn't. If you run those numbers over a 40-year lifespan, you get to $22,000 average per year. If you remember the numbers I told you earlier, you add that $22,000 to $48,000, our median net worth, we rise to the average. Let me repeat. If we get our kids a higher education, we end poverty in America. What does that mean? When we end poverty, studies have shown poverty is directly tied to violent crime, homelessness, lack of access to healthcare, and many other ailments that are befuddling our communities today. In addition, if we end this problem, if we solve this problem of poverty, we will create $2 trillion for our country, $2 trillion in GDP. How? Studies have shown that $960 billion is what we lose to childhood poverty. You know, we have Medi-Cal, Medicaid, we have EBT, SNAP, we have a lot of different programs for poor people. We can end those programs by ending poverty. In addition, when we take our children, the misallocation of labor, you know, we have a lot of kids running around on the streets, you know, they're selling drugs, they're violent crime, they're causing trouble. And if we take those kids, instead of sending them to jail and spending $150,000 in their care, we can turn them into engineers, making $150,000 paying taxes. That creates $1 trillion in value. Ending childhood poverty creates $960 billion in value. That's $2 trillion we create for the American economy by simply ending poverty. So before I talk about, you know, poverty and how we end it, let me talk about college enrollment and the statistics, because we already talked about the fact that education is the way, higher education. So let's focus on college. Well, the enrollment, a lot of kids go to college, Black and white. We have 61.8% of our kids who go to college, and on average, and 61.2% of Black kids. So we are getting our kids to college, but guess what? The average graduation rate on average in America is 64%. For Black people, for our children, it's 45%. More than 50% of our children drop out of college within the first 6 years. Only 40% of Black men graduate. Why? Because they got to go take care of the family. There's not enough money. What's the number one reason quoted? Lack of financial resources. There's also, racial, issues that happen, lack of support that happens, academics. Most of these are tied to lack of money. And over 60% of Black men are actually have a full-time job in addition to going to college. So McKinsey, I give you a lot of credit for what you did. I mean, it's inspirational for many, many children. You shouldn't have to do that. You didn't have to get a 2.0 GPA, which affects your life going forward. You could have, had the money and then you could have started on third base instead of in the dugout. So how does student debt affect, and of course, because we have less income, we take on more debt. How does student debt affect Black people? 71% of Blacks take on student debt in general versus 56% of whites, almost 30% more. Black students make up 72%. We're only 13% of the population. Black students make up 72% of Pell Grants. That's the grants we give to poor people. Total student debt owed by college grads is about 25,000 higher for Black people. 4 years after graduation, almost 50% of our children still have 12.5% more than they borrowed. Let me repeat, 50% of our children have more debt 4 years after graduation than when they graduated. We have an epidemic, especially in our community, that is tied to student debt. Student loans. Now, let me talk about how college is funded, right? Because you're wondering, well, what do student loans fit into funding college? This is going to shock you. Only 10% of the cost of college is funded through student debt. Let me repeat, only 10, let me be specific, 10.64% of college funding comes through student debt. 40%, 39.54 to be exact, comes from parent contributions, and 11% comes from college savings plans, and student savings and income accounts for another 10%. So 60% of the cost of funding college comes from savings plans and parents. Remember, we just talked about our parents don't have the money to send our kids to college? Well, the only other option is savings plans. Well, let me talk about that. College savings plans. Studies have shown, multiple studies. I was doing some work with the College Savings Foundation, CSF. There was a bill that was passed, part of the last retirement planning bill. And I think it was Susan Collins, Senator Collins, and another senator who were very supportive of it. And what essentially happened is that we realized that kids with a college fund are 3 times more likely to go to college and 4 times more likely to graduate. But underrepresented people of color either don't have the money to set up a college fund, or they don't have the knowledge or access. Here's why. And I quoted this statistics to our legislatures a few months ago. 30% of Americans are aware of college funding plans, 529 plans, covered LESAs, Roth IRAs, and so on and so forth. Like I said, I'm in Port Arthur, Texas. I've traveled around the country, in Chester, Pennsylvania, Pine Bluff, Little Rock, Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Arkansas, Chester, pretty much all across in these communities. Less than 1% of our communities, underserved communities of color, are aware of these college savings plans. So what I decided to do was address the problem in 3 ways: access, financing, and financial literacy. And I'm going to talk about that now. But before I do, I tend to talk too much. Do I have enough? Do I have more time, or are we about to end? I didn't hear you, Stacey.
We will end at about 12:58. So it's it's 12:50. So go ahead.
Okay, so the 3 things we're doing is access, financing, and financial literacy. What does access mean? We're going to go across America, myself and my team. I'm going to get every single child, 3.6 million Black children, 4.3 million Hispanic children, and 568,000 Native Americans, 2 million mixed kids. And we're not going to forget the white kids. We're not exclusionary. We're not the problem here. We're going to get the 3.6 million white kids in poverty. All 12.5 million kids, we're going to get them a college fund. We're starting with our community because the need is higher. We're going to hand them a college fund. But that's not the only problem. We got to get them the money. How much are we talking about and where is the money coming from? We've developed it, by the way, it's going to take about $700 billion to fund the college plan of every single child who's in college now. One Black child in college, $1.9 billion. We don't have $700 billion. But if we put $20 billion aside per year, growing at the same rate that college grows, 8%, we solve the problem. It's $20 billion per year. We solve the problem for Black children in America. Mayor Jackson, you mentioned the issue of college going college costs going up when financial aid goes up. Let me tell you a little bit about that, because we've done a lot of studies about that. Studies have shown that for every dollar of financial aid the government grants, the colleges pull back 83 cents in financial aid they give, plus the overall cost of college. For every dollar of grants, the cost of college goes up by 60%. Those folks are waiting for the grants to come so they can reduce how much they spend and just so they can increase the cost of tuition. They know they're playing the game with us. There's $660 billion now in college endowment funds. Harvard, my alma mater, has almost $53 billion. Why? Shouldn't that money be going to needy kids? So financing means we're going to get them the money, but we're going to change the way it's funded. Let me tell you something really quickly. The government spends, remember I just told you we need $20 billion per year to get all our kids to college and through? The government spends $140 billion. Government, private institutions and nonprofits spend $140 billion on grants. The problem is we do it at the end when the kid is 18 years old. But by the time the kid is 18 years old, college costs are going up by 8% every year. We're behind. We need to start early. We need to start saving early now. And so what we're doing is we're bringing together, and we need to change the way we save. So we're bringing together a consortium. We brought together a consortium of 3 different groups of people. One is employers. In 1973, ERISA started the Retirement Income Securities Act, which pretty much funded college, funded retirement for many parents, for many people. By matching contributions from employers, you're allowed to match the contributions for your employees, and the employees are able to use that money to retire. Why aren't we doing the same thing for 529 for college plans? And so we've developed a system, we've built a technology, and we've interviewed all of the large employers, many, Amazon, all through, many of them are willing to do it. That we believe can provide 40% of the cost of education, matching funds from employers. So if you have employers within your communities, those employers are willing to. We just have to roll the plan out for them. The second way is nonprofits and foundations. There are hundreds of billions of dollars that are available. We've talked to a lot of those foundations. There's money that's available, but unfortunately, it's not reaching the kids until they're 18 years old, when the college cost has risen so high that it doesn't make any sense. And the third part is government. We will, unlike, we just talked about, 71% of our kids using Pell Grants. We don't need to. It's not more money that's needed. It's restructuring the way we distribute this money. So employers, foundations and nonprofits, and the government. And so that's pretty much the plan we've discussed, we're working on. So I really want to just sort of pause here because, we have 6 more minutes. I don't want to run over. I have a lot more to talk about, but I want to stop and see if anyone has any questions.
Well, I'll start. Mayor Jackson, City of Beverly Hills, Missouri. I've really believe everything you've said here today is impactful. And I put some in the chat that this needs to be turned into action. But it seems that you already got a program position to roll out. My question would be, what's the earliest you think kids will be able to benefit from a program like this that you're talking about? We have children entering, say for instance, junior high now, that's going to be faced with a serious issue when it comes down to getting into college, as my son did. As you say, the money comes too late, and he almost didn't get into North Carolina A&T for engineering because he was coming up short with the money that he could get. So how soon do you think something like this could roll out to where we could look forward to, advertising this all throughout our communities.
I wish it were 10 years ago, but unfortunately, it's not till the fourth quarter. Why? The reason why was because it took a lot of work to come up with the structure. There's been so many different things that have been done to end the college, to end poverty and the crisis. We needed to spend the time and go to the root cause. Once we understood the root cause, then we were able to get what Ross said about getting the community is the biggest part. When you come into a community, and that's the biggest part for us, you come to the community, you have to get the school districts, you have to get the mayors involved, you have to get the school district involved, you have to get the community involved, you have to get the city council involved, you have to get the teachers, the principals involved, you have to get the foundations involved, you have to get the boys and girls clubs, there's so many different things you have to do in each community. And then we built the technology. And so we'll be rolling it out in the fourth quarter. And what we're doing now is we're part of where I'm in Port Arthur is we're testing it out with the smaller cities, to make sure that we can get, the right mix of it. I think 40, 30, 40 employers, 30 foundations and nonprofits, and 30 governments is the right mix. But we just want to test that assumption. And so we're rolling it out. So the fourth quarter is the most, the earliest would be able to do, fourth quarter of this year.
Well, thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you for your presentation and the SUCCI team. Clearly, we could talk much longer, but our time is coming to an end. So mayors, we will definitely have David's contact information available to you, and we encourage you to reach out to any of our guests that spoke today. Thanks everyone for joining us. We have recorded today's session and we'll make it available online. You will be able to see the links to the products discussed today in your EMLI LinkedIn group. Special thanks to our guests and the partners at Results for America and SUCCI for closing out our session around student loans. And thank you, recent graduates. Be sure to follow us on social media at Our Mayors and visit us online at ourmayors.org. Thank you for joining us today. This concludes our session. Thank you.